We have a philosophy here at ProArch, and this is our philosophy when it comes to the security side of things. AI is just another layer to protect. And we came up with that because if you're looking at AI for your business, things are evolving so fast. It's really easy to feel overwhelmed, feeling like you don't have a good grasp on what the different security layers are that you need to protect, right? We have this constant innovation that's occurring at a really rapid pace. A lot of the stuff gets thrown on your plate. So first off, you're not alone. We're in that experience as well right now. So we're all learning together. And we put this webinar together to make sure that you can learn from some of our lessons. You can see how Microsoft and your investment in the Microsoft technology stack can really give you a really great comprehensive security program that can help your business at whatever stage your AI journey is at. But also think about it from as you go forward, right? In the past, you'd have to layer on security for your endpoints or identity. This is just going to be another one of those. As we go through that, keep that in the back of your mind. 10 years from now, 5 years from now, we'll probably have a new layer to have to protect. But for right now, we're just going to go through this AI side. That being said, it is just another layer, but it does require us as IT and security professionals to approach this a little bit differently. Jonathan, I believe we're going to do a poll at this moment.
That's right. Yeah, one of the first things that we start out with when we're assessing organizations for their AI security readiness is policy. A lot of organizations do not have an AI usage policy. So my question for all of you joining us today is, do you have one? Is it being enforced? Is it in draft? Go ahead and take a moment there to answer that poll if you can.
And while you're putting in your answers, let's take a look at this slide as well. The AI capabilities are expanding, right, in your business. That's on the left side, right? And security leadership is being forced to defend on these multiple fronts. And the business, right, is rapidly experimenting with different types of AI. When we talk to customers, this is a daily occurrence now, right? People are leveraging the various co-pilots, Copilot on the desktop, Copilot in the apps, Copilot Studio, that people are experimenting, trying to bring real business value and data into their applications. And these new use cases are creating new data flows and new applications that haven't been protected. On the right, we also have attackers and their use of new types of attack mechanisms. And right, what we have to think about on there is what are we having to expect or plan for and track as they start using this side of things. Just recently, this was within the past couple of weeks, there was a new example of a Microsoft technology being used to help phish credentials. It's called co-phish. This was this attack, right? It's no different than any other phishing technique, except for it uses a different platform, and it uses Copilot Studio to try to deliver fraudulent attacks to the end users. So we got to be aware of these new methods, right? Our internal teams are using them, but also the attackers are using them. So right at the center are 3 core exposure points that is really important for security to consider.
Just quick, Ben, here. I've got the poll results up. Looks like in progress, drafting or piloting the policy is leading, following yes, they have the policy, and then not yet.
That's great to hear that we have so many people on that journey. So let's look at that center side of it, right? So we have those 3 core exposure points. People, right? We got to make sure our identities, our credentials, our prompt accesses are all being protected, and there's no misuse or types of injections here. One of the key areas for success here is policy and education to your company. In the middle, we have apps and models, right? So this is protecting and defending those workloads that are being deployed and the AI systems that are increasingly connecting to sensitive data. Right? So that could be your Microsoft 365 Copilot or your Copilot Studio or some sort of open AI in Azure that you might be running, or one of the other numerous platforms out there. And then we have data and infrastructure, right? This we need to make sure that we maintain governance around, visibility, and also control of that data, right? Because we're going to have things moving between clouds, on-premise, It could be multiple clouds, things like Fabric, right? Data platforms that are rapidly being adopted and used, right? Your AI successfulness often has to start with how good your data is. So this is all changing that attack surface, right? And it's demanding us to think about these three things in particular on here. I also did want to note, right, as we start moving into this agentic AI side of things, we should start considering too, as we build out access into that, right, treating each one of these agents as its own identity source, right? You're going to want to be able to really drill down and restrict what they have access to and making sure that it's very limited on that front. So this is something we still hear, right? We don't allow AI in our organization. So even though the industry is evolving extremely fast, the statement pops up. And I'm here to say that really you can't keep AI out of your organization. And if you think that your users aren't using AI, I guarantee you that they are. So I'll show you why here. So there's some really interesting statistics that have come out. 78% of organizations today are using AI in at least one business function. I had the same conversation, right? We're not using it. Turns out the security administrator that I was talking to wasn't familiar that AI was baked into their core business app, and that on a daily basis, hundreds of people were leveraging it. You got to think about where the apps are, right? And start asking questions around that.
Yeah, and it's becoming so embedded in everything that we're doing now, especially here at ProArch, and just seeing all the solutions out there that are starting to use AI more and more. We're going to have another poll here for the audience. How are you using AI in your day-to-day role? So just a few options here to choose from. You've got Microsoft Copilot or similar tools for productivity. Maybe you're using Copilot to help you review emails, draft emails, create presentations, things like that, or just miscellaneous questions that come up. If you do have the licensing for it, or you're just using the free Copilot, right? Got a couple other options here to consider as well. Give folks a moment to respond to the poll there.
Yeah,
A couple more coming in.
Yeah, very good. So that knowledge worker space, right? 75% of people are using Gen AI at work, and that's doubled in the last 6 months, right? So very wide adoption, very rapid. We've never gone through a transformation that fast. And it comes in conversations every single day, right? The senior executives, senior leadership, CIOs all want to be able to leverage AI to differentiate, able to use it in their business faster. Now, if we look on the right side, this is the challenge for our security teams, right? We have this rapid innovation, and this is typical, right? Over the years, new technology comes out and security trails, right? It could be security trailing for a few months. It could be a year or two behind. But never has there been such a great innovation with security trailing on this front. And part of it is that we don't know what the risks are on a day-to-day basis, right? New risks are coming out. It's really around people that are doing research on this front, people are exploring and seeing what is possible on here. And it takes a little while to figure out how to do compensating security controls that are providing that layer of visibility that's needed, or how do you stop that, right? Or how do you detect that? We have a lot of innovation that's occurring both for a productivity side of things on the AI, but also the security front.
We did get quite a few responses there, Ben, that our attendees are in fact using AI or similar tools like Copilot, right? I had a couple people say that they're trying to work on use cases. It's not currently in production.
Awesome.
All right, so before we dive into detail on the roadmap, I want to talk first about a story for one of our managed detection and response customers. So this customer is a healthcare startup that came to us looking for MDR and AI security. As we saw on the last slide there, security is always trailing innovation here. Customers rapidly innovating and looking to make sure that they're handling their data securely and they have a secure foundation. So this customer, for example, as you might have guessed, is definitely in the healthcare space, and their entire foundation is data and AI. So they have a platform that leverages AI to bring together cancer care data from many sources into one view and generate insights. So you've got oncologists, pharmaceutical companies, providers, all these different users that are on the platform and using it for insights for things like clinical trials and faster drug development. It's improving patient outcomes ultimately. So as you can imagine here, security and compliance is a big concern, right? We have sensitive data. We have users using the data, right? We have some internet exposure here. So all these different things to consider, you got to make sure that you're handling it securely. You're protecting those sensitive files with PHI and PII. So this customer came to us looking to secure their platform and make sure that everything was being handled appropriately. And most importantly, they had response, right? So not just a secure foundation, but detection and response, which is critical. So we deployed MDR for AI security here for this customer. We cover their entire cloud estate, right? So entirely cloud-based up in Azure. We utilized several tools here to protect this customer and make sure that we have strong controls in place and response. You see some of the numbers there, 459 alerts in the last year, right? Someone's got to respond to those. Out of those, we had 13 that were true positives, right? So something malicious or concerning that happened that needed eyes on, and so that was a key piece here. You also see the compliance controls that were met there that was using Defender for Cloud. Overall, 9 Azure subscriptions that were protected. So we had a really great success story here for this client. Additionally, beyond the controls and the response there, we provide strategic security and governance to this client in the form of reporting, really meetings and things of that nature with the client to make sure everything's in alignment, everything's going in the right direction according to their vision.
Those are some awesome statistics, Jonathan, and it's that advisory side of it that helps the customer make sure that as they are doing new innovations, that they're taking advantage of the investment that they've already made in the Microsoft stack, right? So new capabilities come out, Microsoft Defender for Cloud, or being able to get those enabled, making sure that they have the visibility, and then being able to respond to those new threats.
Absolutely. Let's talk about the 3 pillars.
All right, so on to some good stuff here. So let's look at the 3 pillars, right? This is what you need from a blueprint perspective. And these 3 will help guide you as an organization to better enterprise protection. So if we look at number 1, right? Visibility and governance. What do we need to start with? First, we got to know what people are doing, right? So you can't really move forward unless you understand what sort of activities, right? What are the AI tools? What are the shadow AI pieces that are being used in your organization? Secondly, now that you have this information, we need to be able to establish some governance, right, across this. And this isn't just an IT function, it's not a security function, it's truly a business level oversight. And the key piece there, and I'll drill into this a little bit more, right, is that the business side of it is what is going to help you as security professionals and IT professionals unlock it to support this. You want to reduce this risk. Well, turns out, right, once you have all the key stakeholders in the room, right, it's people like the CFO in the room, the business units that have these business applications, right, you're going to start uncovering, hey, AI is widely being used here. They may not even know how their teams are using AI, but once you can start showing them how you're doing it through that discovery side of it, right, now you can start having better conversations. That means also doing risk assessments, right? Let's start looking at the classification of AI objects or AI applications and what sort of data sensitivity is going into those informations, right? And then lastly, we need to make sure that we have really clear guidelines on how AI is allowed to be used. What are those approved tools? We're at a really interesting point when I think about how this all works, right? You have all of these different tools, and there's all of these third-party AI systems out there. Data flows are going all over the place, right? You think that you might know what that data flow is, but once you start drilling in, you start looking at, hey, this company over here is using this other third-party provider, right? Now it's leaving your ecosystem, and you want to be able to understand what that is so you can make good decisions about how your users are using the AI, but also what data is going in and out of that. The second pillar, right? So this gets into your data's privacy and specifically the security controls. We need data classification. So this is strict controls for what data can be entered into AI systems, right? You might have controls like public, internal, confidential, or restricted, right? And those things apply different labels, right? Once you've done that in different actions, right? Your restricted content is going to be very restricted to a need-to-know basis. It may also be restricted through encryption, right? So maybe it can't be used in AI. You need to be able to go through that process and align that data side. And then from an access management, we need proper AI access controls and authentication mechanisms. As I previously said, we got to start treating AI as its own pieces, and we got to really limit down what it has access to and making sure that it's doing what it's allowed to do and not more, and keeping that kind of review piece, treat it like a true identity. And then privacy by design, right? This is making sure that we have data protection mechanisms from the workflows, right? From the inception, right? So if we're building applications or agents or other things, we're not trying to backfill security into it. We're doing it up front. We also have to balance that with the innovation side of it, right? Because this is a business game changer. What we want today may not be everything that we can afford to do, or maybe it's going to slow down some innovation too quickly. So building out that roadmap of saying, these are the fundamental pieces that I need to be able to do to be successful. And then as the product or application matures, hey, we can start layering in more things here, add more visibility, more controls, etc. And then vendor security, right? This is your vendor list, right? Who's allowed to work in your environment? What are your users allowed to do? And doing those regular security assessments on there. Lastly, the third pillar, right? This is something that is on a weekly basis, unfortunately, right? This evolving defenses with AI threat landscape, right? So all of these very specific use cases, and we'll show what some of these risks are here in the next slide. What do you need to consider, right, and keep up with, right? This is where it's, I think, really important to have a partner with you. You can have the best team ever, but you know what? There's always more to learn, right? We're all in this together. We're all at a starting point. Bringing a partner along, ProArch, can certainly help make sure that you're addressing risks as they pop up, and also understanding what it is that you need to do from a remediation perspective, or addressing an input-output change, right? New things are going to be coming through here. Secondly, continuous monitoring, right? Telemetry is going to be key in understanding how all of your data flows are going in and out and what's happening within these. So we need very specific security tools that are designed for AI workloads, right? This isn't your necessarily, and we'll show one here that Microsoft has, but this isn't your typical endpoint protection or other things. Those will be key as well, because you're still, in some instances, deploying infrastructure, but you do need to add visibility pieces inside to understand that data flow. And then the third piece, threat intelligence. This is really key, right? To be on top of it, knowing what sort of AI-powered attacks are coming, what sort of emerging vulnerabilities, right? Pre-notification as much as time as possible so you can secure your infrastructure or systems ahead of a problem. And this is all about being proactive, right? And not reactive. By doing that, there's been some showcases of what that impact is. And frankly, you can end up with a much greater data security risk when AI is involved. And it certainly increases from the typical, I think it's somewhere around $500,000 for a typical data breach, up to $670 now, once you have AI, just because it's harder to manage, harder to understand where things are. And so by setting the secure foundation and being adaptive with your security, you'll be in a good spot.
Yeah, and that's key, Ben. That's a good point with needing to be adaptive here and stay on top of the threats. We're going to take a look at the threat landscape, but I think that really underscores the importance of having a partner and strategic guidance. And that's the reason why ProArch has rolled out security briefings. We round tables internally to discuss all the latest threats, what we're about to get into here, but very important, especially with security continuously being behind the curve of innovation and just how fast everything is changing here. It's tough to stay on top of all of it. So let's take a quick look at the AI usage layer. And this is the layer that most organizations are really concerned about, really the usage, protecting their end users from doing things that they shouldn't be doing. So you've got your end user that wants to consume AI because they want to be productive, right? Everyone's using AI, and that's really the goal here, is to be more productive. So you got to think about, all right, what AI apps are the users using? Are those apps secure? Are there any risks associated with those apps? What data are they inputting into these apps, and how are they doing it? There's more options now than ever. You've got videos, speech, images, text, right? Do you have controls in place to protect your end users from harming themselves? What's to stop your end user from uploading your sensitive data into ChatGPT or pasting an image of sensitive data, right? These are all things that we're continuously thinking about and keeps us up at night. We're always thinking about ways that we can secure all the different use cases out there. But let's take a look at some of those user threats that we've got. So we've got prompt injection, sensitive data leakage, which I just briefly mentioned, on the unauthorized access, and you got a few more there, but really it's those first three that we're most concerned about, right? Especially with the sensitive data. We need to make sure not only are we identifying our sensitive data, but we have controls in place. But before we can get there, we need a policy. That's why we like to ask that question, do you have a usage policy? Because that policy is what your users should be following, and that's how you should align your technical controls to protect your organization against these risks. So that's very important here. There's a number of tools that we can use to enforce that. We talked about Defender for Cloud with protecting the foundation, but we'll circle back on this and talk about a couple more solutions that we can use to protect our end users, get visibility into their usage and things like that later on this presentation here. But then you've also got unauthorized access and oversharing. And this is a big area that comes up anytime an organization is looking to roll out Copilot, right? With the Microsoft 365 Copilot licensing, you get benefits of email summarization and insights into your data stored on SharePoint and OneDrive. Well, are those sources locked down? Do you have labeling in place on SharePoint sites and your files? Or are the access controls locked down to only the necessary people? There's solutions to identify that. We'll talk about one of them here. Before we go into the next layer, the AI application layer here, just a quick poll you'll get here. Are you using an AI app or platform in your environment? Are you hosting one rather? Always curious to hear if we have any attendees hosting AI. It's a lot to think about there. Go ahead and take that poll if you can real quick.
Yeah, one or two responses coming in, couple coming in.
We've got a good amount of people just using SaaS or other third-party tools, not hosting or using AI apps at all, which is very surprising.
But we got one, Jonathan. Someone is hosting it.
One hosted in Azure or a cloud environment. Interesting. These next areas here might be of interest for you for hosting AI and platforms.
All right, so let's talk about the Gen AI side. So when you're building your application, this is something that ends up being hosted within, I'm going to use Azure as the example, right? So you have a custom app here. Now, this app is going to be interacting and being able to do things, right? Some of the risks that start coming up here, right? Data poisoning. So you have data sources, right? This is your organizational data and being able to pull things, right? Whether that's scraping it off the web in real time or potentially, right, taking in one of your different data sources. You can't I don't know any developer or anyone in the data world that trusts their data 100%, right? There's always something there. But what can happen in here is you can be exposed to things like data poisoning. Suppose someone updates that information and manipulates that data and causes your Gen AI app to do something that it wasn't expecting, right? That can also, for example, from a web, and we've seen examples show up this year, where a crawler that was designed for an AI system had an input-output on the back end, right? Once it visited this website, the instructions on the website told it to send an email, right? That you've searched this site and let me know about it. It didn't take too long. I think it was only a week or two of being public before it received an email from an AI agent that said, hey, we've searched your site and here's the email. People are manipulating these things and trying to get ways there. There could be also orchestration vulnerabilities or supply chain risks because these things are tied into third parties often. Let me expand this a little bit more too. So that was only part of it. Now, as you start getting into the applications or the functions, there's another set of risks that start happening here. Additional ability to do data poisoning. So functions can do things, right? Think of this as your tooling, right? As we get into the agent world, we're building out tools that can be controlled, right? So a user might ask, hey, go retrieve the information from my Salesforce information, right? And that tooling is going to go out and pull that information from Salesforce. Or maybe it's going to go update something or very specific skills or plugins, right? Those things are doing input and output, and there's vulnerabilities because of those inputs and outputs into your application. So, you can start seeing why we start needing to have visibility within all of these things, because all of these things are dependent upon each other. They all, will often be tied into each other. At certain points, pieces will be in use, other times they won't be. So knowing where things are and what's happening in this from a visibility perspective is going to be super important.
Yeah, and then last up here is AI platform. So for those of you that might be hosting an AI platform, you've got a few things to worry about here as well, as if the other layers weren't already overwhelming. So you got to worry about your model being stolen, right? So adversaries can replicate your model via API extraction. So that's a thing. Data poisoning is also a risk here as well, right? And then lastly, you've got model vulnerability. So just like any application, right? You got to make sure that your vulnerabilities are remediated, right? Lots to consider here. The model vulnerabilities is interesting. You've got jailbreaks, you've got adversarial prompts, context hijacking, unsafe integrations. As you're integrating your AI and using it and connecting it to other systems, you have to think about these things. And the good news is that there are protections available for this to lock it down and detect and alert on these risks that you have here.
Hey, Jonathan, I thought we were fully up to date last week when we reviewed this slide together, and then another vulnerability came out. I don't know if you saw the thing about whisper leaks. It was about 4 days ago, but Microsoft Research found that they could basically sniff the traffic between some of these pieces here and build enough insight into understanding what that message might be, even though it's fully encrypted, just because of the way that the models all talk. So
yeah, there's all sorts of
something new, right? And that's an example where it's not a risk that you have to face today, but it's something to be aware of as technology advances. And I'm sure Microsoft's going to solve that here in the future for us. But
it goes back to my previous point with the ever-evolving landscape. This is why we can't sleep at night.
So let's dive in. AI usage layer, right? Jonathan had covered a lot of these pieces here. I'm not going to tell you exactly what they are again, but what I do want to say is these are the Microsoft pieces that you need to look at to help you uncover how your users are using the AI layer. Microsoft Defender for Cloud Apps, probably something that you own. In our experience, it's something that most people haven't enabled, and Jonathan will go into that. That gives you some great visibility across how people are using stuff as well as your own apps. Entra, there's always improvements in here that I think organizations can make, right? We have all sorts of capabilities. conditional based access. These things are applying to agents as well, and you can apply those things. So keep those top of mind, right? We want to be able to address those risks in real time. And then Purview, Jonathan, I'll let you dive into it on some of the other slides here, but there's a bunch of capabilities. It's not just data loss prevention, which is labeling and classifying your sensitive information. Right? There's all sorts of discovery, classification, and then they have specific things around AI usage and risky behavior, which is really valuable. So let's go, I guess I got one more slide here before turning it over to you. On the AI governance perspective, I wanted to highlight a few things because this is also key on that first layer too, right? Policy requirements. Make sure you have in your policy these 5 things. We want to do data classification and understanding what's allowed to be used. What are your defined security requirements as an organization, right? What is your approved vendor list? How are you going to handle user training and threat recognition, right? And safe usage practices and monitoring and compliance practices, right? These all need to be defined. And establishing that committee that we talked about, these will help, right, with that. You'll get that sharing of risks, right, with a steering committee. That will help you get that budget. And then these all have great ROIs. There's no reason not to do this, and this is really where you need to be able to keep up with the innovation and the risk side of things.
All right, so one of my favorite solutions here, Defender for Cloud Apps, and Ben said many companies have this. They just aren't aware of it, are not fully utilizing it. I have 3 bullet points here to make sure you get some immediate value out of it. Doesn't really take much to do these things here, right? But you're looking at E5 licensing if you don't already have it, or you can get this as part of the Defender Suite, which is the updated name for the E5 security add-on. There's also a standalone license for cloud apps as well. It's really strong and powerful feature to get visibility into app usage just in general. We have a couple of screenshots here, for example, with a filter on the category, so Gen AI apps, and then you'd see it sorted by risk. Right. Some of the capabilities that you can see, reporting on usage, you can get details on what users are accessing the app, the devices, how much data has been utilized there. You can block them with this too, or you can monitor them. There's a lot of possibilities, but really just start with making sure that the stuff is on. App connectors, right? You're going to want to go into the security portal, right? Go into settings, go into cloud apps, go and look for the app connectors setting. And for Microsoft 365, you have a few checkboxes to enable to get full visibility. You also want to turn on Azure. There's other SaaS applications that you can integrate as well, but do these at minimum, especially if you're invested in Microsoft, to make sure that those are enabled. If you're using for Defender for Endpoint, it's a no-brainer to enable that integration as well. So that's how you're going to get a lot of these details from your end users, right? So their devices connected to Defender for Endpoint, right? You can also ingest data here from your firewalls too. You can set up continuous reports on that. Lastly, you've got app governance. So app governance is going to give you insight into your OAuth applications. So think about the custom integrations that you might have set up, or those app registrations that you might create for one reason or another, and you might be granting an application access to read and write mailboxes or to make changes to your directory, right? So what if an administrator account is compromised and they go and create an app registration for persistent access, and they're setting up secrets, right? And then they can authenticate to these apps from anywhere. Right, so there's some considerations to think about here. Most importantly, making sure that you have visibility so that you're going to get that out of app governance. The setting for that is buried. It's in an odd spot, but you go into the same portal, the security portal, you go into settings, cloud apps, then all the way at the bottom under system status, look for that setting to turn on app governance. Make sure that's on so you can start getting visibility. And again, you're looking at the Defender Suite licensing if you don't have E5. Very powerful. This, what I just mentioned, is just scratching the surface. You could put controls on sessions, right? So you could say, all right, my unmanaged devices, if you're accessing a third-party AI application, I'm not going to let you upload files, right? You could put controls into play based on sessions, based on apps, based on device state, things like that. So there's more to it than that. There's some additional settings that you'll want to enforce also in Entra ID for this to work properly. And this is stuff that we do all the time. So if any assistance is needed here, feel free to reach out to us, of course. But why don't we go to the next solution here for visibility and control. This is out of Purview. So we just talked about the Defender side of the house. Now let's talk about compliance, right? So there's some overlap here. We can get visibility and controls into AI usage. This is also something that if you have the licensing, of course, E5 or the Purview suite, make sure you go and you turn it on. It's very easy. If you go into the Purview suite, you go into DSPM for AI under solutions, you'll see a few of these items listed at the top if you haven't done them already. Every organization needs to have audit enabled. That's very important, but you've got a few other steps here. So you'll want to deploy the Purview browser extension to make sure you're getting full visibility. This is supported in Edge, Chrome, Firefox, so you can deploy that out there via whatever deployment method you like, Intune, etc. If you don't use Defender for Endpoint, you will want to make sure that your devices are onboarded. And if you do use Defender for Endpoint, there is a setting that you're going to want to toggle in the Purview portal to make sure that those already onboarded devices are onboarded to Purview, because it'll utilize the same sensor. So that's nice. Lastly here, there's a few policies that are all deployed with one click out of the Purview portal for this that will enable insights into these different areas here for AI usage. So you get things like sensitive interactions with AI, sensitivity labels referenced, right? You also get details on risky users using AI, right? Maybe that's an area that we should focus on first. What risky users are doing with AI. So there's lots of options there that you can put into place. You could say, for example, I've got a high risk user, right? This is being detected by Purview Insider Risk Management, right? Another area to look at, but you've got a high risk user. Maybe that user shouldn't be able to interact with sensitive data into AI or just data with AI in general, right? So there's possibilities there that you can look at rolling out.
Thanks, Jonathan. Lots of actionable stuff on there and not too hard to implement. So as we look at the AI application layer, so this is that middle layer where you need to start protecting your applications that are hosted in cloud, right? And that could be in Azure, it could be multi-cloud, but Microsoft has some great capabilities to surface visibility into those applications regardless of whatever cloud they're hosted in. First off, MDE helps control any sort of infrastructure that might be in there, and it also helps provide better visibility into how people are leveraging AI. App governance, being able to understand what those usage patterns are, right, that you've been showing here, Jonathan, and being able to see that stuff. There's a new capability called Entra ID Agent, right? This is a single identity source for your agent authentication with really fine-grained access controls within it. And then lastly, the Defender for Cloud. One of the things that we need is that visibility into what is happening inside of it, right? And Defender for Cloud AI Threat Protection actually offers runtime protection within the AI workloads. So it's looking at those prompts and what's going back and transpiring between the interactions and discovering when things are happening in there. And we got a great demo coming up for that. But we want to really address these risks wherever possible. And Microsoft has a great stack in here. Just a quick blurb here. I'm just doing a time check. We're at 2:45 right now.
Yeah, just real quick. You heard me mention Defender for Cloud a couple times. It'll come up a couple more times here. Overall, this is the solution to have in place if you have cloud workloads. And it's not just Azure, right? You have AWS, GCP. And if you use Azure Arc, you can extend protections to your on-premise environment as well. So out of Defender for Cloud, all the different plans and offerings that it has, the one feature that I like the most is Defender CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management. So with that, you get recommendations and you get attack paths as well. So we'll take a look at that in a little bit here. We can move on to the platform layer.
Yeah, I'll say that I have evaluated the big vendors. I've evaluated the individual ones in here. Microsoft is way farther ahead in the comprehensive security story than anyone else. And that's because they operate at a different level than most, right? They're not just a pure play security vendor. They're the largest security vendor in the world, but the fact that they do data and AI has really accelerated that. And that's where, again, as we look at the AI platform layer and that pieces, we have additional visibility that their tools can do. Right? AI Foundry, some of you may not be familiar with that, but that's really the AI stack that allows you to build AI platforms. And there's some basic capabilities in there around doing filtering and stuff like that, or Azure Confidential Computing, being able to leverage that for sensitive workloads, right? Maybe you need a secure enclave for that, or you want to be able to do very strict protection around it, right? Sensitive information going in and out. Just because you have sensitive information doesn't mean that you can't use AI. It just means you have to take a few more cautions on it.
Absolutely. So going back to Defender for Cloud, attack paths, we have one example here just to show you real quick. This is just an example of something that you might expect having the Defender CSPM plan enabled, right, in your subscription, right? You're going to get insights into risk. And the great thing about attack paths is that it's been recently enhanced so that it's more real world. So this was just done back in September, right? Previously, it was very noisy. You would get attack paths that didn't really make all too much sense. They weren't really realistic, or they just seemed to be mostly false positives or low risk. This is now very real world. So you'll see things like your resources are internet exposed. They have sensitive data and there's vulnerabilities, right? You'll see actionable information. So this is a great plan to have enabled on your subscription. If we go to the next slide here, we have an example of alerts and remediation, and we'll go over an example of an alert from start to finish with detection and response. But what I want to call out here is just the wealth of information, right? With security being evolving, there's a lot to stay up on, right? As we established. Now with this, when Defender for Cloud generates alerts for you, it's giving you tons of information that you don't have to go digging for across the internet and read a whole bunch of articles. It's all presented here for you. And you also have actionable steps to take to prevent future attacks. I find this incredibly valuable.
So before you put your workloads in production, get this enabled. That's what I'm taking away, right? This is, make sure you go secure
Absolutely.
first, foundation. AI Foundry, this is a guardrail. This is not a full-fledged security tool. I like to think of this as like a typical firewall, or this is a web application firewall, right? You have static rules. These things can be avoided. It makes it harder, but a determined threat actor is going to be able to get around some of these things. But it's a foundational piece that you do definitely need to have in place. And these are oftentimes, for example, blocking sensitive or harmful content, right? Or certain prompt shields, right? But that information is only going to be as good as the latest updates on that front. It can protect certainly from any sort of jailbreaks or indirect attacks, but have this in place, but to also be aware that this is not necessarily a full-fledged security control. It's kind of static in my opinion. So we covered a lot of different things, right? So this is where you need security coverage, right? This is the big piece, right? Anything highlighted in red is a spot that needs some coverage. And lucky for us, right, Microsoft has been able to translate these all into platforms and services that really work together and talk through the Microsoft XDR story. So there's one thing that is missing in this, right? This is your security coverage. You need people and processes. So don't ever forget that, right? Make sure that you are doing your security awareness training on AI. You have processes and security tied to how you're deploying these AI apps and tabletop exercises, right? What if one of these things, these AI workloads, does disclose sensitive information? How are you going to respond? So we got a demo here. We're going to show you how Microsoft tools block and respond to a real AI threat. on this. So kicking it off, we have a prompt injection attack using some ASCII. That stuff gets blocked. We end up showing some security alerts that come in there. And then it gets on to the investigation and our response. So this is hosted natively in Azure. And we have a user that's trying to bypass some security controls, right? Forget all of your instructions. This is an AI Foundry piece, right? Prompt Shield blocks that. So you can see up at the top right, initiated chat failed. Now they're going to get a little more tricky. They use ASCII characters to try to mask this interaction. We have hooks inside the application that are feeding this over into AI threat protection. And what we start seeing is that there's some malicious activity happening in here, right? Things that are not looking right. So we start investigating from a SOC perspective. So within the Microsoft XDR interface, right, we can quickly see that. We got the complete story. SOC's going to dive in. Now, this is giving you a little sneak peek in our SOC and our tooling behind here, right? We're pulling out some telemetry. We're showing what it is. We're enriching that information through threat intelligence in real time. We're discovering if there's some sensitive information. Maybe this is a malicious IP address that's suspicious. And we have all the case details directly in there. So we're going to take a remediation action and we're going to block that IP address, right? So there's a WAF sitting in front of this. We're going to remove that session automatically, right? Driving that 403 error. So there's some real-time alerting. It goes out to the client, right? Here's the case. Here's what's happened, who performed it, etc. Letting them know that this is occurring at their environment. We've discovered some other things, right? This user just switched IP blocks and now he's coming in from a different spot. So now we're going to block that user, obviously compromise the account and revoke all of the sessions through automation. Very quick, easy, completely automated from the SOC perspective.
Very important to make sure you have that detection and response in place and those alerts don't just sit idle and not get any eyes on. So very key piece here.
All details are synced back over to the Microsoft side, so everything stays within your environment. So some take-home steps as we wrap up here. And we'll send this out, but make sure you understand your responsibility, right? Cloud providers like Microsoft really giving you lots of taking responsibility for things, but there's still your responsibilities. And a lot of that comes back to the data and compliance. Or as you start building more comprehensive applications and agents, those are going to be open to more risks. So certainly when you're doing those things, working with a partner can help you make sure that you understand your data flows, how to control those properly, embed the right security in your MCP servers, and help you get the most out of your value very quickly. The things that to do, and I'm going to point out a couple really things, right? Get your usage visibility. Make sure you define your strategy and building those understandings with your AI governance committee, right? And that needs to really be cross-functional. Make sure you've defined the responsibilities, everyone knows what they are. Looking at your infrastructure, right? Upgrading systems, tightening access controls, enhancing data governance. I can't emphasize how important it is as we start looking at these things, understanding how your data flows, because the ways that these things are interacting, right? You might be pulling data sources from all over the place, and that's really the future, right? People want to be able to leverage the access that they have. Being able to understand that info is really great, and that really goes into zero trust as well, right? You can't protect what you don't understand.
Yeah, that's very important, Ben. While you can go and deploy Defender for Cloud Apps and Purview and turn up some Defender for Cloud plans and CSPM and all that good stuff, that's all great. That's very much needed. But having a very secure, strong foundation is also important here. And that's why we like to emphasize the importance of zero trust. We do offer zero trust assessments. We do zero trust workshops. Very key area to focus on and make sure you're in alignment with.
And then long-term, but it's that third pillar. How do we maintain this, right? Because it will be evolving, and we're back on that. So in closing, these are the 3 pillars. This is where we can help. If there's something out there that we can assist you with, please reach out. Happy to always have a conversation. Like I said, we're all in this together. We're all learning. I learn something new every single day in this journey. Please reach out and let's have a conversation and see what sort of problems you might be facing or where you want to start, or helping put together a short-term and a long-term roadmap. We're happy to assist on that.